Bungalows used to be popular in the UK, but almost no one builds them anymore. 25 years ago, they accounted for around 7% of all new homes in the UK, but today, bungalows make up just 1% of new builds, and the numbers keep falling every year. I have a lot of time for bungalows. My wife and I both grew up in bungalows, and now we live in a bungalow. The decline is understandable. The price of land has risen so much over the past half-century that property developers must build taller homes on smaller plots to make a profit. The owner of this bungalow in England needed a bigger home, so he contacted me to discuss the possibility of knocking the existing property and replacing it with a much larger two-storey house. I advised him against doing this, and I told him how to get more space for less money by redesigning his bungalow instead. Stay tuned to find out how I did it. If you are new to the channel, my name is Neil and I'm an architect based in Edinburgh. I've been altering, extending and renovating homes since 2009, and I make content showing how this type of work is done. I offer consultations to homeowners right across the UK who seek my advice about construction costs, planning permission, building regulations and whether there are better ways to get what they need from their homes. I'm going to talk about the project, my redesign, the practical issues, the planning and building regulations and costs. If you want to skip ahead, there's chapter timestamps below. Let's get started. The existing house. My client had lived in the bungalow for several years. They got planning permission to convert the garage into a habitable space, but didn't carry out the work because they realised it wouldn't solve their problem. The house was badly laid out and it didn't have enough bedrooms. The previous owners had built an extension, these rooms at the end of the house with a very nice study overlooking the garden. Because the site is on a corner plot, it has an awkward shape. It has a great garden, but the street frontage is narrow and that limits any extension to the sides. Extending to the rear is the obvious way to go, but that just makes the house longer and the layout more convoluted. The house would become one long corridor with rooms at each side. The client told me the whole area used to be a pond before the houses were built. This means the ground is unstable and any new structure must have piled or raft foundations, which are much more expensive than conventional foundations. Apparently the neighbours discovered this when they built an extension to their house a few years before. Knowing this, I could see that any new house on the site would cost much more than average. The budget would need to account for knocking the existing house and then building a much more expensive foundation to support a new two-storey structure. Now, to be fair, the client had a budget of £600,000, which is a lot of money, but they wanted a 300 square metre house, more than double the floor area of the existing bungalow. And that works out at £2,000 per square metre, and I just didn't see that being feasible in 2024. My redesign. This video is just a very quick sketch layout, nothing fancy, but it shows what's possible. Let's go through this step by step, and if you have any questions or better ideas, post them in the comments. First off, I was lucky enough to have accurate elevation drawings of the house from its previous planning applications. A lot of people who book consultations don't have these, and using the drawings as a starting point, I drew a cross section. This shows a slice through the house and it allows me to work out one simple but critical move, replacing the roof to create new rooms upstairs. The existing roof has an 18-degree pitch, which is very shallow, no room in that loft. But if we replace it with a new 40-degree pitch roof, suddenly we have the ability to create habitable space. The new roof is 2.1 meters taller than the existing roof, and in most suburban situations, this could lead to overshadowing of neighbours' windows or private rear gardens. That would usually be a big issue during a planning application, but given how far apart the neighbours are on this street, I don't think any increased shadowing will be significant. Of course, if you convert the loft, you need a stairs to access the new space. Because the bungalow is essentially a long rectangle, I placed the stairs in the middle, next to this existing wall. The idea is that once you climb to the top, there will be rooms on either side of the landing, about equal size. Now, I want to limit the amount of internal demolition as far as possible to keep costs under control. So if this wall is more or less in the centre of the house, let's use it to place the stairs. Building regulations require at least 2 meters of headroom at all points on stairs, and this is something a lot of people don't consider when thinking about converting a loft. I made a full video about this. Check out the link in the description if you want to learn more. For this bungalow, I thought about building a new dormer to accommodate the new stairs, but after some back and forth, I was able to make it work without one. The new roof is tall enough, so more money was saved there. This kind of stair with a half landing is known as a dogleg or switchback. You can see the dashed line showing the 2-meter headroom above the steps, and there's a lot of useful storage underneath. I am conscious that both neighbours have secluded rear gardens with a reasonable expectation of privacy, so the main source of natural light for each room in the loft will be windows in the gables. One at the front overlooking the street and one in the back overlooking the rear garden. That said, I have included new roof lights facing to the side, but to avoid peering into the neighbour's property, I set these high up the roof slope but still within reach so they can be opened for ventilation and cleaning. Now, one thing to keep in mind when looking at drawings of an attic or loft is that floor plans can be deceptive. It looks like each of these rooms have loads of space, but you have to keep headroom in mind. This is why a section drawing is so useful. The central third of the new rooms will be 2.4 meters from floor to ceiling, which is the same as the ground floor, but the roof slopes downwards and I decided to place the side or hanger walls at 1.5 meters. There is no criteria for this other than my own experience and the fact the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors set 1.5 meters as the minimum headroom for measuring the area of a building for sale or rent. Any area of floor with less headroom doesn't count towards the square meterage of the building. Let's leave the loft just now and head back downstairs to work on that layout. The main strategic move I want to make with the house is to place the living area at the back, overlooking the mature rear garden. I'm going to convert the existing garage to habitable space, something the client had previously received planning permission for. This will now become the entrance vestibule and kitchen. We will need to insulate the garage walls and floor, but we will also need to raise the garage roof to make this work. I did the same thing in my last video, redesigning this house in Scotland. If you are thinking about converting an existing garage, you should always have it inspected by an engineer first to make sure the existing structure can cope. In the house, I'm going to place the dining table in this corner, overlooking the garden. I really like these windows and this recessed entrance doorway from the original layout, so let's keep them. We could cut the corner window down to form patio or French doors, but the garden is about half a metre below the internal floor level, so the ground would need to be built up or a patio deck formed, and that's just more money. But if you are serious about creating a patio, check out the sponsor of today's video. Sunflex UK designs and manufactures high-quality aluminium windows and doors in the UK. I've used them on several of my own projects, and I believe they offer a great balance between cost and quality. Don't just take my word for it though, check out these videos I made, which include the costs. There's a link up here and in the description below. The internal layout. My golden rule for open plan spaces is not to create a rectangular box, because everyone can see everyone else all the time. Especially if we're aiming for 5 bedrooms, that's a family home and will be very busy. Any open plan space will need to allow for different seating areas. The breakfast bar, occasional table, dining table and living areas each have a distinct character. Another thing to consider is that with living space at the rear and the main entrance down this side of the house, these rooms at the side will become bedrooms, and I want to create some distance between the windows and the path to the new entrance door. A simple flower bed or planting area should do the trick, just enough to enforce a sense of privacy, but also make this area so narrow that no one will be tempted to park their cars there. Because the redesigned house will have 5 bedrooms, the planners will require 3 off-street parking spaces, and this could be tricky if the garage is removed from the equation. With the new living space at the rear of the house, I want the main entrance where the garage door is currently. For that to work and feel like a welcoming entrance, I don't want cars parked down the side of the property. Therefore, I'm going to demolish the front porch to make room for the required car parking spaces at the front. Next up, I thought about the utility. If you have an open plan space with a kitchen, you do not want to be listening to the washing machine while you try to watch TV or catch up with the family at the end of the day. Placing a utility space under the stairs makes sense because it's at the center of the house and that's the ideal place for laundry. I've got 2 bedrooms upstairs, now I need to get 3 bedrooms on the ground floor. This existing room makes an easy win. Next up, I made a family bathroom by combining several smaller spaces, and that allows the corridor to be straightened out, making a more efficient layout. The English building regulations say that the main bathroom has to be on the same level as the principal bedroom. So if we try to save space here by just building a tiny WC, we have to put a much larger sanitary facility on the upper floor, and with the limited headroom, it will struggle to fit without going to the expense of building a dormer. Now, I've mentioned both the planning system and building regulations informing the redesign. If you aren't sure how they work, I made a full video explaining the difference and there's a link in the description. One decision I agonized over was placing the master bedroom. In the end, I placed it at the front of the house with its own ensuite and dressing area. Placing the bed against a feature wall neatly divides the space, and I tidied up the layout by pulling the bedroom door further into the hall. Let me know in the comments if you think this was the right decision. Back upstairs, I made the landing smaller so that a modest shower would fit. There will be only about 2 meters of headroom in that shower, which isn't ideal. The only alternative would be to build a dormer to house a bigger bathroom, but that's going to increase the budget and I want to keep costs as low as possible. Headroom also plays a role in the bed placement. I pulled a hanger wall out to a point with 2 meters of headroom, and that allows the bed to be usable. The rest of the coombe ceiling space can be used for wardrobes. I've done the same in the other attic bedroom and placed access doors for storage in the eaves. Practical issues. The main reason I told my client to consider redesigning the existing bungalow is because the site was originally a pond and any new house would need super expensive foundations. Now, I did caveat that advice by telling them not to go ahead with raising the roof until a structural engineer had inspected those existing foundations. Making the roof taller and converting the loft will increase the load on the foundations, and that should be confirmed before going further, but at least we know it's possible to squeeze in those 5 bedrooms and make the living space more usable. How much will this cost to build? Even if my redesign of the existing bungalow costs less than knocking the house and building a new one, there is one big financial disadvantage. If you alter an existing house, you have to pay VAT. But if you build a new house, you can do it VAT-free. Now, I don't think that's fair, but I don't make the rules. So what would this cost to build? Well, the work to convert the garage would cost about £25,000 plus VAT, forming this new opening between the house and the garage about £15,000. These new kitchen units would cost around £20,000. Allow £5,000 each for the ensuite, family bathroom and shower room. The internal alterations to the existing house would cost in the region of £100,000 once you factor in wiring, plumbing, new heating, flooring and redecoration. Costs for stairs vary a lot, but assume £5,000 for a decent quality hand-built timber design. The big cost will be forming a new roof. Given the amount of material involved, upgrading the existing attic floor, adding new roof timbers, insulation and roof tiles, as well as lining the interior with plasterboard and all the associated wiring, plumbing and decoration, I expect this would cost in the region of £150,000. That comes to £330,000 plus VAT, which is just under £400,000. Now that is considerably less than the client's original £600,000 budget, but it's not without its compromises. Issues with the redesign. The client originally aspired to create a 300 square meter new build house. Now this redesign is not even 200 square meters, so it's a much smaller house. But I doubt the client's budget would allow them to build a 300 square meter house on the site to begin with. No design is perfect, and while this layout gets a great living space overlooking the rear garden, the bedrooms are all compromised in some way. These two aren't especially big, the 2 rooms and the roof are overly long and have limited headroom, and the master bedroom overlooking the street isn't ideal. That said, I still think this is a big improvement over the original layout, and it's affordable within the client's budget. In all honesty, I wish I could do something like this with my own bungalow. Who knows, maybe if this channel takes off. If you see other missed opportunities in this design, let me know in the comments. And if you are thinking about altering a home anywhere in the UK, check out the reallifearchitecture.co.uk website. There's a link in the description. You can book a consultation with me if you need specific advice about your property, but please read the terms and conditions before you book. If you found this video useful, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, you should subscribe. I make new videos every week.